Good evening all, and welcome. Let me take you tonight to the haunted woods for a chilling collection of true scary stories. So get comfortable and let the darkness take control. I had just finished my ice cream when my family all decided that it was only fair for me to go and get more, as I'd just finished the last of it, and they didn't want to miss out. Now, the only place that was open at this time of night, 11 p.m, was the milk bar, about 3 kilometers through this old track through the forest. I knew there was no fight in it, so I put on my warmest clothes and set foot on this muddy, faded trail. After about 10 minutes of walking, with a dim, half-cracked head torch, a whole herd of rabbits came running up behind me, about as fast as a bicycle, straight down the trail, and as soon as they passed me, they all split off into the brush and ran off. Straight after that, a deer of some sort came crashing through the bushes to my left and almost hit me, but it turned to the right and kept running. I didn't think much of it, until I heard this blood-curdling scream from about 100 meters behind me. My blood ran so cold I could barely breathe. I didn't have any clue as to what it could have been, so I didn't want to risk anything, and I sprinted down the rest of the track for about 70 meters until I looked behind me and saw this pale, white, tall, lanky figure, panting and growling on all fours, sprinting and staring right at me. At that moment, I only had one choice but to run off track in the direction and pray that what I'm seeing wasn't real. Now, I always thought of myself as a brave, tough kid, and in moments like these I would always choose fight over flight. But I cannot lie that all my confidence was drained out of me the moment I saw this thing. I jumped over this log but tripped, and I'm not lying when I say this is just like the horror movies. My head torch fell off, and I didn't bring my phone with me. So, my only source of light gone, I could only hide because it was nearly impossible to run through a thick forest at night in the pitch dark. Under the log I tripped over was this little hole that might just be able to fit my body. So I had to do it quickly because this thing was coming quick, and I could hear it getting louder. So I quickly lifted up the log with all my adrenaline and crawled under it and lowered it on top of me. I looked through the crack at the bottom of the log and saw these mangled, almost broken-looking legs hurtling past it, breathing louder than a lawnmower. I could only get a glimpse of the legs under the moonlight and couldn't see anything else. And with the panicked state I was in, I didn't want to risk getting too close to the log. After I lost sight and sound of the thing and my eyes adjusted, I slowly crawled from under the log, got back into the track, and bolted the rest of the way to the milk bar. After I got there, I looked at the time on the clock and it read 12:43. That meant I had been hiding under the log for roughly an hour. I asked the shop owner when they closed and they said 1, and after that, I caught him staring at my dirty face. He asked me what happened, and I said I was hunting rabbits because I myself didn't even know what had happened. The man looked fairly sweet and in his 50s. I bought the ice cream and asked if he could give me a lift home. The man looked fairly nice and in his 50s, and said yes. So what do you think this is, guys? Please, I need answers. I'm a long-distance hiker. I've hiked the entire JMT twice in both directions. I've hiked many miles on the Pacific Crest Trail, as well as numerous random trips in my time in the outdoors. I probably have a year of collecting time sleeping outside in the wilderness, and have hiked over 2,000 miles collectively. I have only managed to encounter 2 bears, some coyotes, and I've smelled a mountain lion and heard one chirping near me. I'm not a big believer in cryptids and such, but I do have a story that made me question that. Let me share it with you now. In 2022, I hiked the John Muir Trail in the Sierra Nevada in California. It's a long-distance hiking trail that spans 211 miles from Yosemite Valley to Mount Whitney and takes about a month to complete. The trail is remote and located in some of the most amazing, untouched nature this country has to offer. I hiked the previous year in a traditional southbound direction, and in 2022, I hiked the trail northbound towards Yosemite with my wife and a female friend of ours. This story is on that trip. One day, about halfway through our trip, when the afternoon was getting ready to end, we decided to camp in a place called Grouse Meadows. The previous year I enjoyed fishing here, and the gentle river that curves back and forth through the meadows makes a nice place to swim and filter water. We started to make camp for the night, and I noticed a large buck about 10 yards from us, staring. It then started approaching, and I began to yell at it for it to go away. It circled around us a bit, and then left down the way we came in from. I decided I was going to catch a few fish before the sun went down, and maybe we could have some fish tacos for the night. The girls agreed, and said they would finish making camp. We split a 3-person tent, so it was easy. As I went down towards the small river in the meadow, there was a large rock near where we were camping. It was about the size of 2-car garage, and about that tall as well. Large enough you couldn't see over it. When I passed it, I noticed a young man come walking around it in my direction. I was surprised, because by this time most people are already getting camp ready, as it gets cold and dark fast in this Sierra. I was also a bit confused on where he had come from, as he was not on a trail. He was just walking straight through a meadow with a river running through it, away from any trail. As he got closer, I noticed he was wearing a small day pack, blue running shorts, and a white t-shirt, all completely clean. Now this may not sound strange, but when you are multiple days away from any trailhead that leads out of the mountain, it sure is weird. I was kind of walking away from him towards the river, but it seemed like he was following me, so I stopped and said, "Hey man, how's it going?" He replied, "Hello," in a very plain monotone voice. He then said to me in the same voice, "What are you doing?" I replied, "Well, I'm going fishing," as if it wasn't obvious, having a rod and reel in my hand. But he didn't laugh, and he kept following and said, "What will you do with the fish? If it's big enough and not pregnant, I'm gonna eat it." At this point I had stopped by a little beach on the side of the river, and he passed me by, and I felt relief. He seemed off to me, but then, just when he was about 20 feet past me, he stopped and turned around along the beach and squatted down and watched me fish. Eventually I pulled one out. It was a good size, and I prepared to clean it. And just as I pulled the guts out of the fish, he said, "How does it taste?" And I looked over at him waiting to hear a joke or something, and he was smiling. A terrible feeling came over me, like the hair on your neck kind of feeling. "Well, I have to clean it first, man, then cook it, you know." I say it in a way that would have come off to normal people as, "I'm done talking to you" kind of way. I stuck my knife in the sand in front of me and didn't put it away. The man, after a while, said, "I'm hiking 30 miles today." "That's nice, man, have fun." And he stood up and walked off into the meadow towards a tree line, not on any trail, and just vanished into the woods. I went back to camp and didn't really say anything to the girls, because I didn't want to scare them. The night came in, we ate, and went to bed, and I mostly forgot about it. I woke up. I felt woken up. I noticed both girls sitting up in the tent, and my wife says, "There's something there." I was so tired, I just said, "No, there's not. Go to bed, guys." I laid down. So did the girls. And within seconds, a very fast shuffling sound could be heard. We all sat up. I use a small foam mat sitting outside my inner tent in the vestibule for shoes at night, and sit on it during the day, and I saw it moving. I could feel it moving. Something was literally right outside the tent. I grabbed my headlamp and our bear spray, and with my heart exploding out my chest, I zip open the tent, ready to battle whatever was out there. But there was nothing. Not even a distant sound. It was dead silent, like ear-ringing silent. Must be a squirrel or a buck, I say. We lay down, and this ended up happening at least 7 more times. Every time there was nothing. Eventually I started to actually pass out because of how exhausted I was, only to really remember cursing at it as I fell asleep. I woke up again and looked over to both my wife and our friend who were asleep. I heard the sound again and got ready my bear spray and worked up the courage. I zipped open the tent, and there he was, about 15 feet away. The same guy on all fours in an almost push-up-like position, staring directly at me with the same face. It was completely silent. Then he crawled backwards into the dark, with a speed I can't explain. I woke up. It was a dream. I was so relieved it was a dream. In the morning I told them that I had dreamed it, and that's when they looked at me like I was joking. Our friend said, "Yeah, they were there. You didn't dream it." My heart sank. What about the guy? What guy? They only remember seeing that guy down with me by the river. So, he was real, even if it was just a dream, that he visited the tent. They also recalled not understanding why they fell asleep so fast when something was outside, and they felt like there was a blank in their memory before falling asleep. We all agreed that there was a general feeling that it was just off in that place. I don't really tell this story because it sounds fake and stupid when I say it to myself, but it was real. I will never sleep in that meadow again. A few days prior to this event, we had come across an obsidian site on the south side of Martha Pass and took a few shards with us. I remembered this detail while reading another post describing native petroglyphs in the story. Wonder if it can be related. When I was in 3rd grade, right when school let out for summer vacation, my grandma took my older brother and I to Georgia to visit my uncle and his husband. I've only met my uncle a few times before this, but he's always been the best. Whenever I saw him, he always had $20 for me, and always took us out to Cece's Pizza. This summer was going to be one to remember. He said we were heading up Disney World, Universal Studios, and SeaWorld, and we would be staying at his home until we got everything settled. As a kid, this was without a doubt going to be the best summer of my life, with so much fun on the horizon. I never thought anything scary would happen, right? School let out on May 25th, and we were all at his home by May 30th. Driving from the airport to his home was so much different than driving through El Paso. There were trees everywhere, and it seemed to get darker the further we drove on, despite it being about 2 in the afternoon. His home was in a cul-de-sac surrounded by thick woods. When we pulled into his driveway, I noticed there was a small creek that split the property between him and his neighbor. It was really nice looking, but eerie at the same time. We entered his home through his living room. It was all wood-paneled, and almost looked like we were walking into a luxury cabin. Upstairs were nice as well, with all the bedrooms and kitchens and other living rooms. He also had a lot of big windows, so you could see the woods from almost anywhere upstairs. Now, it was super hot outside, and my uncle's house was cooled down, but I was chilly, like I wanted to stay outside and warm up after I'd walked in. When I walked upstairs though, it was way warmer, so I just thought his air conditioner was downstairs. After he showed us around, I started to unpack my stuff in my cousin's room. We would be sharing a room, but I saw it as a slumber party every night. While unpacking, I got cold again, like goosebumps all over my thighs and arms. I put my stuff down and walked to go outside, but right when I walked out the room, I was warmed up again, and I chalked it up to his place having a good air conditioner. Our first night there is when it all started. We had just had dinner while my grandma and her cousin went out to get ice cream for dessert. My uncle made hamburger helper and ordered a few pizzas. It was one of the best dinners I'd had in a while. Then, we all sat down in the downstairs living room to watch a goofy movie. I managed to stay awake the whole movie, but succumbed to my food coma when they started up Homeward Bound. I crashed out on the couch, and they had covered me up to let me sleep there for the night. I woke up later, and everything was pitch black downstairs. I looked around while my eyes adjusted, and saw a faint light by the TV, but it looked like a column of faint light right across the front of the TV. I stood up, and my eyes were mostly adjusted, but this column of light was still there. The longer I looked, the more it started to look like the faint outline of a person. I didn't know what was going on, and was wondering where this light might be coming from, so I walked towards it and reached my arm out. My hand was in this light, and it was like someone turned the air conditioning on again. I was freezing, and goosebumps ran up my arm. I pulled my arm back and stepped away, and then something happened that made me run upstairs. The light started getting closer to me. I stepped back and ended up plopping down on the couch behind me while this thing got closer. I ended up climbing over the couch and running upstairs. I ran into my cousin's room and got under the covers with them. I shut my eyes and tried to fall asleep while my heart was racing and I was breathing hard. I don't remember when I fell asleep, but I remember waking up to the smell of bacon. During breakfast that morning, I tried telling everyone what happened, but no one took me seriously. My uncle started singing the Ghostbusters theme song, and my cousin just kept trying to scare me all day. I wish I could say that was all that happened. It had been a day since I'd seen the column of light downstairs, and I refused to go down there alone, so I decided to play outside. This may have been a worse idea than just staying inside. I thought since he lived in a cul-de-sac, there would have been some kids to play with. Sadly, it was just me bouncing a ball on his driveway trying to make up games. I invited my brother to play, but all he wanted to do was watch Digimon. So I'm sitting out there. That loud buzz of bugs in the trees surrounded me in this forest jungle, and I'm about to head inside. Then I hear a crunch behind me, like someone walking through leaves. I turn around, but nothing and no one is there, just the forest wall and that small creek next to my uncle's driveway. I stare at the direction of where the sound came from for a second before I set the ball down and venture closer. I walk past the first tree, and my feet crunch the leaves and fallen pine needles. I think this is the sound I just heard a second ago, and take another look around before I start heading in further. The creak gets louder as I get closer, and when I look back, my uncle's house seems to be getting darker. Makes sense though, I mean it's being blanketed by pine trees. I keep walking until I'm looking at this small flowing creek. Being from El Paso, the closest I came to this was a flooded street, so this was like a storybook fantasy to me seeing this in real life. I started picking up rocks and sticks and tossing them into the water, making small splashes and watching the sticks flow downstream. That's when I heard another splash. It wasn't me, I was out of rocks. I looked to my right, and I think I saw something go behind a tree. I stay still, but call out, "Hey, is anyone there?" There's no answer. Then I hear it again. That crunch of the forest floor, but now it sounds closer. Like whatever made that sound earlier was coming up on me. I knew I was close to my uncle's house, and I'd be able to run back if anything happened. So I walked closer to the sound I heard. I stopped at the tree, and thought I saw something hiding behind. I'd hold my breath and look behind, but nothing was there. No footprints, no rocks, just nothing. I exhale, and that knot in my stomach loosens. But when I look up, I see something I really wish I hadn't. I see what looks like a tall shadow, just barely peeking from around the tree in front of me. This thing's head is almost scraping the high branches while it peeks at me. I don't see any distinct features on the figure. It's just super tall, and its head looks long, kind of like those aliens from the movie Alien. Then, I hear the ground crunching again. This thing has moved, and it's getting closer. Its position changed. Before it was just peeking at me. Now it's full on staring at me, and it looks like it was hugging the tree it was behind. The knot in my stomach tightens, and I turn and run back inside. As I run, I hear other footsteps, like I'm being chased, and I let out a scream while tears start to stream down my cheeks. I made it to the concrete of my uncle's driveway and trip. I scrape my knees up, but I get up and run inside, slamming the door behind me. I'm a tear-soaked, booger-lipped mess when I try and tell everyone what I saw. While my uncle cleans me up and calms me down, I try telling him, but he shrugs it off and says, "Oh, it must have been a deer." I scream that it wasn't a deer, but he just wipes my face with a warm washcloth and tells me I should just play inside instead. I stayed inside for the rest of the day, but I kept peeking out the window to see if I could see anything. It all looked the same as before, except down by the driveway, where you can see a dirty spot where I fell. After dinner that night, my uncle sat outside with his husband on their patio. Fireflies danced around them while I stayed speaking from the sliding glass door. I stared into the pitch-black forest, scanning the trees to see if I could see what had scared me. I heard the sound again. The sound of something stepping on the forest floor. I interrupt, shush my uncles and tell them to listen. To my surprise, they heard it too, only they think it's another deer. I go inside and head upstairs to my cousin's room. I keep staring out the window until I fall asleep. I don't know what I saw that day, but thank God I didn't stay at that house much longer. When the weekend hit, we were already on our way to our dream vacation. I still got teased by my brother and cousin the whole trip though. The stretch of Bear Creek Road, Colorado 74 from Morrison, Colorado to Kitteridge, Colorado, has several memorials, and more have appeared in the past year or so. I've been going to this park for years and years, and explored off trails once and found 2 teepees made from large branches, with one seemingly having a game trail that leads straight to a very strange tree. Last Halloween, I wanted to go there alone at night for some scares. I got to the lot and could no longer bring myself to leave the car. Mind you, I'm no stranger to being in the woods alone at night, but this place just feels different. So I thought this strange feeling might mean there's something going on out there. So my boyfriend and I decided to do some ghost hunting here. There are 2 very small parking lots for Corwina Park, one on both sides of Bear Creek Road. One side is just forest, and the other side has a creek with forest behind. The first time we went together for a ghost hunt, we hiked off trail all the way up the slope in the middle of the night. The energy was really weird until we got really high up. As we went back down, we felt the same eerie feelings. Every time we have gone since, we have stayed at the parking lots, as they're right by the trees, and we get a lot of activity here. On the side with just forest, there's this loud thumping sound that sounds exactly like large rocks being thrown onto the ground. No rolling sounds, just heavy thumps. The sounds are just a few feet in front of us. It occurs several times while we're there, in several different spots. Well, we went during the day after several nights of hearing these thumps to see if we could find anything, but there were no big rocks except for 2 much further away from where we heard it, and set well into the ground. On the other side there is a creek where there is one tree where we always hear a noise that sounds like smaller rocks being thrown into the tree. We aren't allowed here after sunset and have been stopped by the cops once before. So every time a car drives by, we run behind our parked car. I guess hoping if the cops didn't see people, they wouldn't stop. These noises mostly occur as we're running to hide behind the car. Sometimes we even hear rocks being thrown onto the gravel of the parking lot, or the road, or into the creek. Sometimes my boyfriend hears heavy walking behind us, and we always have good flashlights but never see anything. The energy of this place during the day is completely ordinary and even peaceful, but at night it's completely different. We even looked into some of the deaths on this road and could only find about 3 of them, and all 3 of them are very weird and don't make much sense. The Jefferson County Police, the ones that stopped us one night to tell us that we can't be there after sunset, even told us they think there's something strange going on at this park. They told us there have been many instances that if you whistle into the trees, something will whistle back. Also, one time during the day, it was just my boyfriend and I and one other lady that was acting very witchy-like. Not in a bad way, but witchy nonetheless. So the most recent time we've gone a little over a month ago, and we always go at night for ghost hunting. Whatever is happening here was very aggressive this time. We had the usual rocks being thrown and heavy thumps, but there are metal guardrails on the road just by the park entrance. We were on the creek side and heard something hit the guardrail, maybe a small rock. Then we went to the other side, more heavy thumps. And then we were walking closer to the road, and there's a large metal sign for Corwina Park. We saw car lights coming around the corner of the canyon, right as we turned around to walk back to the car. The sign was hit extremely hard, as if a large rock or something, and we were very close to the sign when it happened. It was the most aggressive experience we've had here. We decided to leave right away. The strangest thing about this is that before something hit the sign, I was thinking to myself, what if the guardrail gets hit again really hard or starts shaking aggressively? Just making scenarios in my head. And then I thought, if it did, I wouldn't drive out that way. I'll go the other way and head towards Conifer and head back into town that way. Well, then that sign was hit, and I didn't drive out towards the sign, I went the other way. I was driving for a bit, though I missed the turn into Conifer, turned around and steered off the shoulder off the road just enough in the right spot, where the asphalt dipped down 2 inches and both my passenger side rims snapped in half. No service, and we were stuck out there for a bit. Another thing to note about this area, there's a small castle literally by Corwina Park that was built in 1929 called Dunafong Castle, which is now used for weddings or charitable events. Strange stuff has happened there, even female singing coming from the direction of the castle when no one has been there. Since our first night there together, whenever we hiked at night, my boyfriend has had ghostly activity in his house, including hearing my voice say, "Hey," when I'm not there. And at one time when I was there, I heard it too. Does anyone know anything about this area or have any thoughts? I've not been able to find anything online about it. I'm an 18-year-old male and live in a pretty rural area almost right on the state line between Indiana and Kentucky. There are 2 pretty large, densely forested areas which get a lot of animals passing through most of the year, but aren't hunted on very often due to their being private property. No one goes out there except for me and the family that owns it. I'm not trespassing, because they don't mind people being out there, just to be completely clear about the situation. I've lived here all my life, and there are a lot of things that go on here. As most people know, Indiana weather is weird, and not a whole lot of interesting animals pass through here. We get the occasional black bear, which aren't native of this state anymore due to hunting. We get deer, coyotes, and the occasional foxes. I have a few shortish stories of my encounters that I'd like to share, and hopefully, someone will be able to tell me what I could be seeing. The first one happened when I was probably around 9 to 10 years old. We had just cleared out a large area of brush and had hauled a pretty massive log into a pile by the tree line. It had probably been around 60 to 70 pounds and took both of us to carry it due to the length. The next morning, I went out to get on the school bus. I liked to stand in the driveway and wait, and the area we had set the log on was probably around 20 to 25 feet away. I heard a lot of noises coming from the area, like a low growl and lots of rustling in the leaves, but didn't pay much attention to it. I decided in the last minute or so that I was getting on the bus that I would turn around and look to see if a coyote had caught a dog or something, but it wasn't a dog. It was the same log that we'd hauled, getting launched straight into the air, landing almost halfway to me. I was so shocked that all I could focus on was the log. I didn't see what threw it, and I almost missed the bus because I walked over to it. The second one happened when I was having some friends over. I'm 11 to 12 now. I live on the second story of our house and have a full view of the yard on my side, as well as a half view of the backyard. We were up late and were about to go to bed when out of my window I saw a person walking. I would have guessed they were anywhere between 6 to 8 feet tall, but I couldn't really be sure. We were home alone, and no one should have been there. You couldn't really see much aside from the fact that it was obviously a pretty muscular figure. The third and last story that I'm going to share happened only 3 years ago. I was a very frequent hiker and jogger at the time, and I had gone probably around half a mile back into the woods. Now I want to add that there are caves and streams that run through the woods behind our property, and no one goes back that far, absolutely no one. In order to get there, you have to walk anywhere from 1 to 3 miles back if you have to make it through a large blockade of thorn bushes and a lot of fallen trees from storms. This created a challenge for me, and it was the main reason that I had bought my knife this time. I kept walking after struggling and cutting through the thorns, and eventually made it to a tree line which fully surrounds a small clearing. When all of a sudden the entire forest went silent. Even the birds were quiet, which in Indiana is a rare thing. Knowing that this meant something was nearby, I got low and got my knife back out. Not long after, I heard huge tree branches being broken off in the distance to my left, and completely froze in fear. Then this huge, black figure came out of the trees. I couldn't even breathe as it sprinted on 2 legs through the clearing. The most detailed description I can give to this day is that it was big, covered in hair from head to toe, and had a weird mix of colours on its hair. It was mainly black, but had some brown spots and some tan. I think the closest comparison is the coat of a tortoiseshell cat. I waited until I couldn't hear it anymore. It was running straight to my right, and the people who lived that way were really trigger-happy with their rifle. Around 2 hours later in the same area, where it would have been running, right on the property of this old man with a weird hatred for animals, I heard 2 to 3 gunshots. I now hear banging on trees. I see footprints in the snow in the winter too big to be ours. I see multiple figures moving in the tree line, and something big has rammed into the side of my house on 3 separate occasions in the last few years, and every time our house completely shook. The stray cats that used to live in the area are quickly dwindling in numbers for some reason as well, and I'm getting concerned. Does anyone know what could be causing this? All I want to do is to stop and protect myself. That first summer was the first time I ever stayed overnight at camp. It was a small day camp tucked deep in the woods. It was mostly just games, hikes and crafts, that sort of thing. But once a year they hosted a single overnight for the older kids. You'd roast marshmallows, tell stories, and sleep in the big clearing by the lake. I was 12 and feeling very awkward and nervous, trying hard to seem like I wasn't actually scared of the dark. That night, the counselors built a huge campfire and everyone had gathered around laughing and shouting. But the atmosphere felt strange in a way I can't describe. It was then I drifted towards the tree line with a friend, Sarah, to get away from the crowd and smoke. The woods loomed just behind us, dense with pine and birch, the shadows forming a single wall of black. We were talking about nothing, who likes who, which counselor was strictest, when something strange caught my eye. 2 small blue lights floated between the trees, perfectly level with my face. They didn't blink like fireflies usually do. Instead, they glided slowly side by side, steady and deliberately. The light was bright, almost glassy, a sharp contrast to the warm orange glow of the fire behind us. At first, I thought it had to be a trick of reflection, maybe from someone's flashlight, but the lights didn't waver or change direction. They moved forward a few feet, paused, then drifted to the right, still perfectly parallel to one another. "Do you see that?" I whispered. Sarah turned, but by the time she looked, they were gone. She laughed, assuming I'd imagined it, but my stomach tightened. I knew what I saw. We rejoined the group as one of the counselors, a tall guy called Eric, announced it was time for camp story. The tone around the fire shifted instantly. Even the younger kids fell silent. He began telling a story about a boy who had died at the same camp decades ago, back when the trails were still used for horseback riding. According to him, the boy had been thrown from a horse, his foot caught in the stirrup, and dragged through the woods until someone found him at the edge of the lake. And then they went on to say that on the anniversary of his death, you can still see his bright blue eyes glowing in the woods, watching the campfire. Eric smiled and said, "Don't worry, he's friendly, just checking in on us." Everyone laughed it off, but my hands went cold. Blue eyes? In the woods? I wanted to say something, tell them what I'd seen, but the words jammed in my throat. I convinced myself they must have been fireflies. Maybe 2 of them just happened to fly perfectly side by side. Coincidences happen, right? Still, I couldn't sleep that night. The tents were quiet, the forest humming with crickets and the occasional snap of a twig, and every time I closed my eyes, I imagined those 2 blue lights hovering in the darkness, patient and unblinking. I thought about the way they'd move, not erratic, like insects, but smooth and intentional, like they'd been looking at me. At some point near dawn, I gave up trying to sleep. I sat up in my sleeping bag and stared through the mesh flap of the tent. The woods were a hazy grey, washed in the early morning fog. I thought I saw some movement between the trees again. Something small, the faintest shimmer of blue, but it might have been my tired eyes playing tricks on me. The next day I didn't mention it to anyone. Sarah teased me about my haunted bugs, and I laughed along, pretended I wasn't unsettled at all. After all, I didn't believe in ghosts, still don't in fact. But every now and then, if I happen to see a firefly, I remember this, and it'll always keep me wondering about what I saw that night. I'd like to preface this by saying I'm fairly skeptical when it comes to paranormal situations. I think it's fun to speculate, and I'm open to the possibility. But I usually rationalize it in my brain, rather than assume ghosts, you know. But this really spooked me out, and I've never been able to come up with a proper explanation. Let's see what you make of it. One night about 4 years ago, me and my friend were texting. Neither of us could sleep, so we decided we'd just meet up and hang out for a bit instead of sitting bored in bed. It must have been, 3 a.m? So I asked him to stay on a phone call with me while we walked. Everything was going all good, until I heard this sound that made my heart fall out my ass. A screech. I'm talking guttural. It was like a mix between human and animal. I heard my friend over the phone in a terrified whisper, "Jesus Christ, did you hear that? It's right beside me." And it really sounded like it was mere feet from him, because I could hear it through the phone, and in real life. Now, we were fairly apart, just under half a mile according to the map, so I reckon this had to be a loud scream for me to be able to hear it as clearly as I did. We both stayed dead silent, just listening, with the sound starting to fade from over the phone, and it got louder on my end, moving towards me, and it was moving fast. Sounded like it was going overhead, then just faded off into the distance. Not once did the screech stop for any sort of breath or break, just consistent until it faded. I'd say it went on for at least 2 minutes. I live in a small town in the north of Ireland, and I've spent a fair bit of my childhood in the countryside, so I'm fairly well versed in animal sounds, but this was like nothing I've ever heard in my life. I can't accurately describe just how loud and shrill this sound was. It wasn't a fox, or any bird I know. There's not really a rich history of creatures or cryptids that I'm aware of, but I did have the idea that if it was some kind of cryptid, maybe it was a banshee. The screech adds up, but neither of us knew anyone that died after it happened, which is like the whole point of the banshee, so I really don't know. It freaked both of us out though. The same friend had a seemingly haunted house too. I only experienced it the one time, heard chairs moving and the cutlery drawer opening and closing by itself. In any case, I truly wonder what the hell we heard coming from the forest that night. It was a quiet afternoon at 1 o'clock, and I was home alone. I stepped outside to sit on my porch soaking in the sunlight, and everything was normal. To my left stood the wall that marked the edge of our property. Beyond, a tangle of overgrown trees and endless forest. I found myself staring into it, half daydreaming, half curious, wondering if I could make out anything moving inside the green mess. And that's when I heard it. A soft whisper at first, so faint I thought it was the wind brushing the leaves. Then it grew clearer, closer. A woman's voice, right beside my ear, humming a lullaby. The sound was delicate, almost gentle, each note trembling like a breath. For a moment I thought I must have left the TV on, or maybe my phone had begun playing music. But when I checked, everything was silent. The sound wasn't coming from the house. It was coming from beyond the wall. The tune was sweet in a way that made my skin crawl. It had that lilting, sing-song quality of a mother trying to soothe her children to sleep. Yet there was something off about it, something hollow. As I listened, I could almost sense her in the trees, waiting for me to answer her call. It wasn't terrifying exactly, not at first. It was more like being gently pulled towards something I knew I shouldn't touch. My body felt heavy, my thoughts fuzzy, like the song was wrapping itself around my head. Then a thought hit me. What if answering her invited her in? I swallowed hard and decided to fight the feeling. I started humming my favorite song under my breath. My voice shook at first. For a moment both tunes tangled in the air, and then hers began to fade away, until it completely vanished. The silence that followed was almost deafening. Then it was like a switch flipped, and I could hear the world again, the cars, the birds, the distant chatter of life returning. Everything felt normal. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had been out there had wanted me to follow it, step past the wall into the trees, like something was waiting for me to listen to the song, so that I could follow it into the woods. I would like to preface this by saying that I'm not in the slightest superstitious, but, well, the past 2 weeks have got me reconsidering. I live in Texas, far southeast, rural middle of nowhere Texas. My family owns over 50 acres, so you can imagine that how much camping I do. I'm 16, male, and unexplainable things have happened to me lately. A while back, me and some friends were walking through the woods. It was the smell that hit us first. It's over 100 degrees out here currently, so dead things stew in a matter of hours. A totally dismembered coyote, arms, legs, and organs strewn about. You might argue it was a predator. Nothing out here could do this to a fully grown coyote. And it feels like the sound of cicadas around us was damn near deafening, almost making the heat worse than it already was. I ushered my friends back inside, and just kept assuring them it died of old age, and vultures got to it a few hours prior. A few nights later it was trash day. We have to take a four-wheeler down the road where we put the trash. It's a decent 45-second windy path to the road if you're going at a decent speed. Of course, my bonehead brother said they couldn't because they had work in the morning. It was 10 p.m. So, begrudgingly, I agreed to do it. I load up the garbage and go through the path to the road. But something just didn't feel right. Like my forehead was sweating cold, yet my cheeks were warm. I can only describe this feeling like dread. When you know something's wrong. When you know something bad is waiting for you. I shrug it off as paranoia in the darkness and keep going. But the feeling doesn't go away. In fact, it gets worse. I eventually make it to the cans and start tossing the trash that was on the back of the four-wheeler into the bin on the side of the road. This road spills out into a bigger one, with forests on each side behind me, and I just stop dead in my tracks after I hear a weird croaking, but I have to almost crane my neck to look at it. I can tell what I'm looking at is just out of eyeshot, maybe 20 to 30 feet, and I'm frozen in fear and confusion. And it was at that moment, this horrid smell bashes my nose in a way that almost makes me fall flat on my arse. I stand there for a few more seconds before booking it to the four-wheeler. My heels got blisters later that night for how hard I hoofed it to those 60 feet. I jumped on the four-wheeler and went maybe 50 miles an hour on those windy dirt roads back to my house. I swear I could hear something stomp behind me, but I didn't dare look back. Before I got to my house, I barely parked the four-wheeler and launched inside, locking the doors behind me, sweating like all hell. I didn't sleep that night, and I could swear that dreadful feeling didn't leave till morning. Not a hoot of an owl, or the sound of a singular cricket. All that rang out that whole night was a slow repetition of Chuck Will's widow, which is a bird thought to be an omen of death. Look up the sound, you'll know what I mean. Does anyone have any idea what's going on? I'm scared to even set foot in the damn woods that never make so much as a peep anymore. It's always quiet there now. This happened years ago, probably around 2002. I was working as a certified nursing assistant at a nursing home in Cheyenne, Wyoming, but staying in Wheatland, which is 70 miles north. I worked the swing shift from 2 to 10 p.m., so when I got off work it was obviously dark. I got on the I-25 and started driving north. This is a lonely stretch of highway even during the day, but at night it's essentially deserted. There aren't even lights except in one small area as you approach the teeny town of Chugwater, and even those only last for about 500 yards where the highway exits to the town are. Anyway, I was about half an hour into my drive, about 10 minutes from Chugwater, and it's pitch black. There are no other cars in sight, no street lights yet and not for a while. I don't even recall much light from the moon or stars, but suddenly, from the right, where there's nothing but open prairie, something zooms into my line of vision. It's a face, and I'm seeing the left side profile. It looks like a Native American male. I could clearly see the aquiline nose and the long braids, even lines from the nose to the mouth. It was so detailed. but the back of the head was almost like a comet's tail. I could see it tapering off a few feet behind the face. It was electric blue, but also somewhat transparent. It hovered in front of me for a few seconds and then shot off to the prairie to my left, as fast as it shot in. I was pretty shaken. I think any encounter with the unexplained can leave you in a weird state. Thankfully, I hit chug water several miles later and was able to safely pull over and take a minute, although not too long, because dear God it's dark out there, and the quiet is so loud it's eerie. I always feel like something is watching you, and maybe it was that night. I tried searching for similar stories over the years, but I've never found anything remotely close to that. The area was obviously rich with Native American culture many years ago. In fact, the town of Chugwater gets its name from the sound of a buffalo being driven over nearby cliffs into the stream below. I just wanted to share, because I've tried telling that story a few times over the years and no one's believed me. Has anyone experienced anything similar out there? A friend of mine has some private land out of the way in northern Georgia, basically lower Appalachia. He did some work to the land out there, and we'd often be out there all day doing some shooting or hunting. In 2022, we planned to have a large group of our friends camp out at the land. We would shoot during the day, hang out and camp that night, and the two of us would go deer hunting in the morning. We all stayed up late. A few retired to their hammocks, or one guy who bought a tent, and the rest of us made a late night run to Waffle House. After we got back, we all said goodnight and went back to bed. We all set up in a big circle around the fire we had going. That was except for my friend and I, who set up apart from everyone else so that we could sneak out in the morning to deer hunt. It was about 3 a.m, and I was in my hammock, and unable to go to sleep. I slept a lick and was wide awake. I don't actually do a lot of camping, so I found it hard to get comfortable. And about half an hour after lying down, I suddenly heard a voice that sounded like it was coming from about 50 yards away, which is hard to tell really in the dense woods. It came in the opposite direction of where everyone was at. It just kept repeating, "Hey, Corey. Hey, Corey. Hey, Corey." It sounded like one of my friends who was asleep in his tent in the opposite direction of the voice. It went on for maybe 15 seconds, and then stopped. I've always heard the stories of the Appalachians and the woods. I knew not to investigate. Eventually, about an hour later, I fell asleep. The next morning, I confirmed with my friends that no one was awake at that time. I've been out there many times since. Those woods really have never felt the same since that event. No one else is around anywhere near those woods. The only thing out there is an abandoned chicken house. And after telling this story to a friend that wasn't out there, he told me he wasn't surprised. He also confirmed he never felt safe in those woods. Him and the guy who owns them have had weird events happen to them while hog hunting late at night. But I think I'll save those stories for another time. I'm part Native American and grew up looking into our folklore. I ended up fearing the woods, especially the ones facing my grandma's house. They always felt strange. One day my cousin took me into the woods. We wanted to look for a cat with our neighbor. We walked until we came across a hole. Thorned bushes and vines made it quite hard to get in. It was pretty big, but it wasn't connected to any other water source. There were chairs, gold, and an old scratched up picture. We tried to get in to take the picture, but we found it pretty much impossible. We went back home and told our family, but they never believed us. A year later, my aunt took me into the woods. I was extremely bored and bothering her. We walked for maybe 5 minutes. The more we walked, the more my head began to hurt. We kept walking until we reached an old cabin. My heart was pounding and I felt physically sick. My aunt gasped, and when I looked over, there was this strange deer. It stood up on its hind legs and looked malnourished. My aunt told me to look at the beautiful deer, and I started crying and telling her we had to go home. The minute we got out of the woods, my head stopped hurting. A week after this, a bear lunged at me out of nowhere and vanished, leaving me with just a scraped knee. On another occasion, I went to pick berries that were right outside the woods. It was about to storm, but I really wanted these yummy raspberries, when a weird creature came out the bushes. It was malnourished, and the sound that came out of it was unholy. It was human-like and had some dark, splotchy hair on its head. I ran faster than I ever thought I could. I remember sobbing and shaking. My little brother went outside to see what had spooked me so badly. He screamed and also ran inside, and we ended up hiding in a closet with knives. All of this happened in my childhood. I'm almost 18 and had a dream this thing was in it. It didn't say a thing, but you could feel its aura. I would run, but it would catch me up and take a chunk of my flesh each time. There was nothing I can do. And when I woke up, I was in intense pain, and I had to be calmed down by my cat, who was hissing at something that neither of us could see. When I was around 8 or 9, my parents took me hiking in this hilly, forested area. It was damp, overgrown, and strangely quiet for a place where you'd expect to hear an endless amount of birds and bugs. But instead, there was just this all-consuming silence. You probably know the kind. There were scattered farms nearby, so every now and then the trees would open up into pastures or fields. I remember us walking into one of these clearings and stopping dead in our tracks. The entire pasture was filled with dead cows. Dozens of them just lying there in the grass, as if they dropped all at once. There were no people or farmhouses in sight, or a single bird circling overhead. Just the bodies. Some of the cows looked whole. Most just looked like they were sleeping, but others had blood on them, and a few looked like something had torn into them. I couldn't wrap my head around it as a kid, but I still remember that strange smell, like iron and wet earth. The whole scene felt wrong. I don't remember anyone saying much, we just left quickly. The memory's fuzzy now, but after all these years it's stuck with me. And whenever I hear stories about livestock mutilations or legends like the chupacabra, that clearing comes to the forefront of my mind. I never asked my parents if they remembered it. Honestly, I don't think I want to know the answer. When I was a kid, my family used to go camping near a small creek just outside a little town in Oregon. The place was quiet and mostly empty, except for the occasional fisherman or hiker. But one late summer evening after dinner, I went down to the creek alone to skip stones. The sun had almost set, and the air was cooling down. As I was throwing stones, I noticed a dark shape standing on the other side of the creek, just standing perfectly still watching me. At first I thought it was another camper, but there weren't supposed to be anyone on that side, and I didn't hear footsteps or voices. So I called out, but the shape didn't move. It was just a tall, thin silhouette, like a person, but oddly still, almost blending into the shadows of the trees. But then I blinked and looked again, and it was gone. I told my parents when I got back, but they said maybe it was a tree stump or a trick of the light. Still, I felt uneasy the whole night, like something was watching us from the woods. Years later, I found out that creek had a local legend about something they called a watcher. Not a ghost exactly, but a shadowy figure people says sometimes appears near the water when you're alone. No one knew why or what it meant. I don't know if I really saw something paranormal, but the apparition, the shadow, stuck with me, and I never went to the creek alone again after that. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you all so much for listening. I hope that you have enjoyed tonight's stories. If of course you have, you can let me know down below. I do appreciate knowing your feedback. I'd also like to apologize for taking this long to do this video, my voice just isn't what it used to be. It hasn't come back to normal, and narrating has become really hard. I don't know if you can hear the, sort of like a dryness in my voice, but it's really annoying. And I'm trying to do everything that the internet recommends to fix this, like the hydration of the vocal cords, but nothing seems to be doing the trick. So I'm quite concerned. Hopefully they're better soon. I'd like to give a final thank you to my members and patrons. Oh, and I actually have some really good news. I'm going to start posting exclusive free stuff over on Patreon on Monday. You don't have to donate or pay anything. Just sign up as a free member of mine over on the platform, and you get some free stuff every Monday. So, you know, that's cool if you want to do it. But that's it from me, guys. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night.